Let's get started putting those advanced mesh editing tools into practical use. So I'm just in a new Blender file here. I'm in the Modeling Workspace tab, just to maximize the 3D viewport. Let's delete these ones, we won't need them. So I've given a bit of thought to what we can make that would showcase these tools, and I think we're gonna do a little tombstone, but we're gonna do, like, you know, a cartoony one, not a creepy one. So let's get started. Just gonna start with the tombstone itself. Not too worried about scale on this one. So just added a loop cut. Gonna grab these. And I'm gonna start beveling some of these edges with Control B. Oops, I didn't want to actually bevel those ones, so I'm just gonna undo that one. And Control, drag up out of box and release to deselect the box selection. All right. I'm just adding a couple loop cuts down here to clean up the geometry. So right now we have what are called n-gons, which are faces with more than 4 sides, which tends to cause issues just in modeling in general. It's just better to have things clean and quadrilateral where you can. Hitting J to join these. Okay, and now I just want to shift these over in the X a little bit so that this edge is a little bit more straight. Okay, that looks pretty good for the profile. Again, all that should have been familiar, just selectively shading an area smooth and then applying the scale to get rid of the shading errors. Okay, so this is a good starting point. So from here, we're going to use our knife project. Let's come in and add a text object, rotate it up. Bring it forward a bit. Okay. Let's tab into edit mode here and change the text. And if we come into the object data properties for a text object, which is denoted by this lowercase a, we can even change the font. So if you come into the object data properties here and come to the font dropdown, it'll give you options for all of the types of font: regular, bold, italic. And you can come into here and change it. So if you have a font loaded into Blender, it's going to appear in this list. Right now we just have the default font. So to add a new one, you just want to click the open font, and it should open to the location on your machine where fonts are installed. In Windows, it is just the C drive, Windows fonts. So these are all the fonts that I have installed on my machine. So we can come in here and just browse for one that we like. This one might be kind of interesting. All right, so we have an issue with this font because it doesn't seem to recognize the period icons. So let's pick a different one. Let's pick this one. It's got these cool sort of drop shadow pieces that I think will look really interesting in this mesh. Okay, so now we have our text object ready to go. Let's click on our headstone. And just rename it there. It's just good habits to keep. Let's tab into edit mode. Let's get sort of a glancing angle and control and click on the text object. And now let's press 1 in the orthographic view. And let's come up to mesh and click knife project. Now it looks like it's been made pretty cleanly. Sometimes you can get sort of funky cuts if the geometry isn't quite right. So look, this is what I mean. It's sort of cut in at an angle here. So yes, let's use loop tools to fix that. Let's select the whole ring around here, and we know how to make a selection of edges into a circle. We just learned that with loop tools. So let's right click, loop tools, circle, and that will snap that into a perfect circle. Same thing right here. All right, that looks a lot better. So unfortunately we've lost our selection that we got when we made the knife project, but we'll just have to come in here and manually select all these faces that we're going to inset. Don't forget these small little ones that have created sort of little slivers here. See, I missed a couple over here. Okay, that does not need to be selected. Just checking my selection. Okay, it looks good. Oh wait, missed that one. There we go. All right, so now that we have our selection enabled again, we're just gonna extrude it in by hitting E on the keyboard. And there we go. I'm gonna enable cavity shading just so we can better view this. Okay. It looks pretty good. We can enhance the visibility of these by scaling them a little. Now, I'm going to change the transform pivot to individual origins, and hopefully this will scale okay. It's sort of a complex shape, and when the shapes are this complex, you never really know quite how they're going to scale. But I think that looks pretty good. The only area I'd like to change is this curve. From here to here, control and clicking for the shortest path to about here. Actually, better just do the whole thing. Let's click that one too. So I believe if we scale this now, yeah, we get it a little bit more visible, and then let's just shift it over a little bit, just so we have sort of an edge going all the way around it that we can see. And you can come in here and do this for all of the edges that you can't really see from the front orthographic view. Something more like that. Okay, so you can come in and do that for all of them. I'm not going to probably do all of them, just because it's going to be very time consuming, but That's a good start. Fix some of this shading. I'm just shift clicking to deselect some of these after I have alt click to select the whole thing. And probably for this, the best method is the shortest path. Okay. So we can just continue to add to this a little bit just to give it some more visual interest. I'm going to bevel some of these corners and edges. So I'm just using a combination of shift clicking and control clicking here. I know I only repeat that a lot because I know that the keystrokes are captured here, but the clicks are not. So I always like to try to repeat how I'm clicking. I'm going to select everything with A. I'm going to hit, and then I'm going to press Alt and N, and I'm going to reset the vectors. Except I first needed to shade that smooth. So this can get kind of wacky sometimes when you're working on flat faces. So these ones actually should not be smooth. So we're going to shade them flat. And same thing for all these ones on the inside, which we can get to if we go into right orthographic. And we're just going to box select this very little edge right here, which should select all of these flat faces. Shade flat. Okay, so we fixed the problems with the edges being sort of shaded, funny, and just to review, we did that by shading this smooth, then in edit mode selecting everything, hitting Alt N, resetting the vectors, and then going back and manually selecting the faces that we needed to shade flat. So I could have used a mirror modifier for this shape, but I did not because the insets I wanted to make obviously are not symmetrical. So if I need to adjust this at all, I just need to remember to select both sides of it. And instead of using like a grab tool to move this in, I would probably want to scale it. By pressing G twice, you can access this edge slide tool, which will slide this edge along the profile of the other one. You can also access it here in the toolbar, but it's easier to just G and then G again. Experimenting with some different methods for getting these edges to look a little bit cleaner. But we can come back to that. Let's continue this out with a mesh and a plane. I'm going to do like the mound of dirt right here. So let's move this out and scale it along the Y. Looks pretty good. Again, not going for realism by any stretch here. Actually, it occurs to me now, because this is not a realistic scene, we can add just a little bit yeah, of tapering up just to make it a little bit more cartoony, I guess. Okay, so with the plane roughly scaled in place, let's add loop cuts. Actually, let's just subdivide this. And open the subdivide menu, increase it a couple times. You just want to increase it to an odd number here because I want this line to be exactly in the center aligned with this y-axis. And if it's an even number, you'll see that it doesn't. I mean, you can add a loop cut here, sure, but just avoid the whole thing altogether by increasing the number of cuts. Okay, so now that that's nicely subdivided, I'm gonna grab this point or this edge loop. I'm going to deselect this last edge here and this last edge here, so it's just these center ones. So you could also just drag out a box selection. And I'm going to turn on proportional editing, G and then Z, and drag this up until it's sort of got a rise in the middle. Okay, let's just fix the shading really quick on that. And we can turn proportional editing off. Flatten that by pressing S and then Z and then 0. We can flatten all the edges around it. And we may need a little bit more detail on this, but we can always add it. Okay. Oh, that last one didn't take. Okay. I'm just going to drag this down to align it back with the ground plane. And can add some more loop cuts here. Yeah, that's a little bit better because now these faces are all approximately square. Okay, let's add a modifier to this. Let's add a subdivision surface just to give it a little bit more geometry to work with. And let's use the randomize tool. So on the toolbar, click and hold on smooth, select randomize, release. And the randomize tool is very powerful. So I often find that using the manipulator is just too strong, and it's better to come down here and just manually type in very low numbers. Great, so that's added a little bit of like a rippling on this on the top of this. And I think I want to add just a little bit more interest to this piece. It's just looking a little stark. So I'm going to quickly come back into edit mode on the headstone piece. And I want to add just to the bottom some extrusions, scaling. So it's about even all the way around. Extrude down again, and then repeat it for like one more level. So E, S, Shift C, S, X to bring that in, S, Y to bring this out, and then E one more time. Again, it doesn't have to align exactly with the ground plane, but I just want to make sure that it is all gonna clip through properly, so I can double check that by just adding a plane and scaling it up and then looking around to make sure that there's no like gaps where it would be floating above the ground plane. It doesn't look like it, so let's delete this for now. Okay, yeah, this already looks a lot more interesting. Let's give these edges a little bevel. Scale that a little bit. let's keep going. So I'm going to use the spin tool to make some flowers for this section right here. So I'm just going to move these objects aside for a little bit, so just so I can work cleanly in the middle without having objects in my way. Sorry, these faces are being shaded smooth and they should be flat. Okay. So let's start with the center part of the flower, the part that the petals emanate out from. So Shift A, set a sphere, and I'm in front orthographic, coming in and deleting the bottom half. Now let's scale this down a little bit, and I'm going to do it in object mode so it scales towards the pivot. And sometimes I don't necessarily model things at scale. Oftentimes I will model them much larger and then just scale them down when I am done, as long as the proportions are correct. There's no problem doing that. Just remember to apply your scale after you finish scaling it down to size. Okay. So I'm going to make a new object here, and it's going to be a plane. Planes are used most frequently for things like leaves and flower petals and things like that. I mean, there are other uses, of course, for planes, but if you wanted to make something like a leaf or any sort of foliage, you would most likely use a plane. So the center is about that large. The petal should be probably like about there. Okay, so let's start. I mean, obviously this petal is quite flat and quite pointy, so let's start rounding out these forms. I think I'm just going to bevel this center edge. And then I'm going to connect these points by just shift clicking to select them and pressing J, which will of course create the points in between them. And I'm connecting them simply so I can bevel them. Let's add a loop here and a loop here. And it has stopped here because this is a triangle, of course. But we can fix this by selecting both of these hypotenusae, I guess is the plural for hypotenuses, maybe. And let's just we're just going to subdivide them, which should create points right here and right here. And let's grab these and round this out a little bit more and scale these out. Okay, so we rounded it out a good bit. We could continue on and get it, very smooth. We've rounded it out in this direction, but it's still quite flat, which we do not want. So let's put a cut right in the center. Turn on proportional editing, press G and Z, and then, so you'll notice here, these edges, this plane and this sphere are part of the same object. So they're both being affected by proportional editing, even though they are not actually attached. So to make it so it is only the things that are attached to your selection that are being affected, just come to the drop down and click connected only. So now when I use proportional editing, you'll see that the sphere over here is not being affected. Let's pull this down a little bit. And we're going to need some more cuts going this way. So let's just do Control and R, scroll up on our mouse wheel, and I think I did 6 cuts there, just until they look roughly square. They won't all be square, but that's okay. Let's grab this, actually this point, these 3, and let's press G and Z and scroll up on our scroll wheel, or down on our scroll wheel, but increasing the size of our influence radius to try to just give it some lift in this direction. Actually, don't even need to go this far in, but you can use proportional editing and scrolling the mouse wheel to get sort of a nice shape that you like. This is good enough for me, I think. So now let's duplicate these petals around in a circle to form a flower. So to do this, you just have to tab into edit mode, and we're going to use the spin tool. Now, a plane is a non-manifold object, remember? So it has this open wire edge. So when we spin it, it is not going to spin correctly. It's going to try to extrude it. But that's okay. All we have to do is come down here to the spin menu and click Use Duplicates. And we can set the number 10, 8, maybe 8. And there we have our duplicates. Now I think I need to do a little bit more transforming of these points to get the correct shape. And they do overlap a little bit. We'll try to fix it. If you scale in the, I believe if you scale in this section of the petals more, it will not have that issue. So it's just because I think this area is too thick. So let's just grab that and scale it in so it's much thinner. Okay. So now at this size, we should be able to spin our duplicates, and they should overlap a little bit less. Indeed they do. There's a little too much space here maybe though. Let's just undo that. So I think my fall off was maybe just a little bit too big, my influence, or I just scaled it a little bit too much. So let's try something more like that. Okay, that's pretty good. Not too much overlap that it's gonna look strange, and there's not too much gap either. All right. So I'm going to stop the recording here, take a little break. I don't want these demos to go on too long, but when we come back, we will be finishing this little piece.